Now, US President Joe Biden has finally bowed to pressure from Republicans, and he's promising to visit the country's border with Mexico as the migration crisis there worsens. Ahead of the president's trip, an estimated 15,000 migrant children, just children and teenagers we're talking about here, are in federal custody, with the US on pace to see up to 2 million undocumented migrants arrive this year. For more on this, I'm joined from Canberra by the Daily Telegraph's federal politics editor and my Outsiders co-host, James Morrow. Sorry, James, I got excited that you were coming on. I got tongue-tied. But this crisis in the US, it really is an appalling self-inflicted crisis. Biden got in and he's just almost immediately used rhetoric that invites people to make that dangerous trip, and is dismantling those Trump-era policies that work so well.
Well, that's exactly right, Rita. And this is completely a case of, you can't say that we were not completely warned that this was going to happen. From the very start of the Biden administration and when he was campaigning, he said, I'm going to stop building the wall. We are going to, give amnesty to people who are here in the United States illegally or undocumented, a pathway to citizenship, all of these different things that basically said, come on in. We're going to work out a way to get you in. We're going to get a way to get you documented and all of that. Now, of course, as we know, Rita, from the Australian example, this sort of thing always leads to tragedy. When you lead these people to, this promise of coming in undocumented and eventually you're going to be okay, well, you've got millions of people now. It's going to be a huge humanitarian crisis on that southern border. People smugglers, just as we've seen in the Pacific, will be taking huge advantage of this. We've got children now, thousands of them who are essentially kids in cages, which is what they said and indicted the Trump administration with. Well, that's happening now in real time, but nobody's saying boo. Biden seems to be completely hands off the situation. Yes, he's going down to the border, but, his border people are not allowing even the media now access to know what's really going on. This is a complete evolution of what's happened in Democrat cities around the country, where they've been having sanctuary cities where they're not charging illegals who are charged with a crime or not giving them over to the enforcement agencies to be deported. And now the feds aren't deporting people either. So basically, it's now a case of catch and release, Rita.
And you're so right. We heard so much about kids in cages, Trump's concentration camps, they were called. There were headlines in the Washington Post and the New York Times. And yet these people who were obsessed by this issue 6 months ago, we're not hearing much from them. And Kamala Harris was asked today about whether she was going to visit the border, and she laughed it off. Have a look at this.
Do you plan to visit the border?
Not today, but I have before, and I'm sure I will again.
James, can you believe the hypocrisy amongst these people who, for 4 years, said this was the greatest issue facing the US, this was an absolute stain on the US's soul, and now there's more migrant children than ever behind bars, and they seem uninterested?
Yeah, of course they're uninterested because, they never cared about these kids when Trump was in power. They only cared about getting an image. And in fact, the most famous image of children, quote unquote, in cages was one that was actually taken during the Obama administration. They don't care about the kids, during the Trump administration because it was about using them to whack Trump. Now that Joe Biden's in office, they don't care again because, they don't care about the border. They don't care about that sort of national security in that sense. The progressive left has a huge problem with borders. We've seen that. We've seen that here. We've seen that in America. This is just an extension of that. And if kids can be used to make their policy aims happen, then why wouldn't they?
And Donald Trump, we saw him today, or we heard his voice on Fox News. He did an interview and he had some interesting comments to make about China-US relations. Have a look.
When China looks at woke and they see the biggest problem we have is Dr. Seuss, in the meantime, they're building factories and trying to kill us in so many different ways. They laugh at us. They think we're so frankly, they think our country is stupid when they look at this, when our competitors look at what's going on in our country, taking down the statues to great heroes and so many other things.
You make some pertinent points there. I wonder if China is looking on at the West and going, my gosh, they're stupid and self-destructive.
Well, yeah, the West is not, certainly not the United States under Joe Biden, certainly not making the case that the United States is a strong superpower to be reckoned with. You know, they're, as you say, as Trump said, so obsessed with all these critical race theory things and obsessing over, green eggs and ham or whatever the Dr. Seuss book is. And the Chinese know this, and all of America's rivals know that. It makes the world a far more dangerous place, I think, Rita, because they look at this and they say, well, we can take advantage of the U.S. We can, push forward, we can expand, we can do whatever. And they also know that they can criticize the U.S. We saw this the other day when China took the American Secretary of State to task for, all sorts of human rights abuses allegedly committed in the U.S. And they know now that the U.S. is giving up its moral capital when it goes down this road of wokeness.
Absolutely. I'll be speaking to you about this Sunday morning, Outsiders. I'll see you then. Thank you, James Morrow.
See you then, Rita.